What the Moon Brings is a short, little-known story. What the Moon Brings is a short, little-known story written by H.P. Lovecraft in June 1922 and published a year later. With this free DLC, we want to thank all the players who have supported us since the game.
I hate the moon. I am afraid of it. For when it shines on certain scenes, familiar and loved, it sometimes makes them unfamiliar and hideous. It was in the spectral summer when the moon shone down on the old garden where I wandered. The spectral summer of narcotic flowers and humid seas of foliage that bring wild and many-colored dreams. And as I walked by the shallow crystal stream, I saw unwanted ripples tipped with yellow light, as if those placid waters were drawn on in restless currents to strange oceans that are not in the world. Silent and sparkling, bright and baleful, those moon-cursed waters hurried I knew not whither, whilst from the empowered banks, white lotus blossoms fluttered one by one in the opiate night wind and dropped despairingly into the stream, swirling away horribly under the arched carven bridge, and staring back with the sinister resignation of calm, dead faces. And as I ran along the shore, brushing sleeping flowers with heedless feet, and maddened ever by the fear of unknown things and the lure of the dead faces, I saw that the garden had no end under that moon. For where by day the walls were, there stretched now only new vistas of trees and paths, flowers and shrubs, stone idols and pagodas, and bendings of the yellow-litten stream past grassy banks and under grotesque bridges of marble. And the lips of the dead lotus-faces whispered sadly and bade me to follow. Nor did I cease my steps till the stream became a river, and joined amidst marshes of swaying reeds and beaches of gleaming sand, the shore of a vast and nameless sea. Upon that sea the hateful moon shone, and over its unvocal waves weird perfumes brooded. And as I saw therein the lotus-faces vanish, I longed for nets that I might capture them and learn from them the secrets which the moon had brought upon the night. But when the moon went over to the west, and the still tide ebbed from the sullen shore, I saw in that light old spires that the waves almost uncovered, and white columns gay with festoons of green seaweed. And knowing that to this sunken place all the dead had come, I Yet when I saw afar out in the sea a black condor descend from the sky to seek rest on a vast reef, I would fain have questioned him and asked him of those whom I had known when they were alive. This I would have asked him had he not been so far away, but he was very far, and could not be seen at all when he drew nigh that gigantic reef. So I watched the tide go out under that sinking moon, and saw gleaming the spires, the towers, and the roofs of that dead, dripping city. And as I watched, my nostrils tried to close against the perfume-conquering stench of the world's dead. For truly, in this unplaced and forgotten spot, had all the flesh of the churchyards gathered for puffy sea worms to gnaw and glut upon. Over those horrors, the evil moon now hung very low, but the puffy worms of the sea need no moon to feed by. And as I watched the ripples that told of the writhing of worms beneath, I felt a new chill from afar out, whither the condor had flown, as if my flesh had caught a horror before my eyes had seen it. Nor had my flesh trembled without cause, for when I raised my eyes, I saw that the waters had ebbed very low, shewing much of the vast reef whose rim I had seen before. And when I saw that this reef was but the black basalt crown of a shocking icon, whose monstrous forehead now shone in the dim moonlight, and whose vile hooves must pour the hellish ooze miles below, I shrieked and shrieked, lest the hidden face rise above the waters, and lest the hidden eyes look at me after the slinking away of that leering and treacherous yellow moon. And to escape this relentless thing, I plunged gladly and unhesitatingly into the stinking shallows. Where amidst weedy walls and sunken streets, fat sea worms feast upon the world's dead.
Thank you for playing. We hoped you enjoyed the little journey to the world of Lovecraft's nightmares. So these next two do have trivia attached to them. And I think they all have 8, or both have 8.
I am writing.
Yeah, we actually started it again. There is a conundrum with this game. So this game also has a PS5 version, and that has a separate trophy list, even though it's the same game. So I don't know if we shock them on back to back and call it 15, 16, or if we just call it 15, even though it's 2 separate lists. So on the profile it would be 2 more games. I think I might just save it for later, kind of thing, and then just kind of speed up and speed through it as kind of like a vacation episode, I guess. But we'll just keep moving through these DLCs. The Little Glass Bottle. The Little Glass Bottle is a short 5 to 10 minute adaptation of a story by Howard Phillips Lovecraft, written when he was about 7 years old. Original words and spellings have been kept in.
Heave to! There's something floating to the leeward. The speaker was a short, stockily built man whose name was William Jones. He was the captain of a small catboat in which he and a party of men were sailing at the time the story opens. Aye, aye, sir, answered John Towers, and the boat was brought to a standstill. Captain Jones reached out his hand for the object which he now discerned to be a glass bottle. Nothing but a rum flask that the men on the passing boat threw over, he said. But from an impulse of curiosity, he reached out for it. It was a rum flask, and he was about to throw it away when he noticed a piece of paper in it. He pulled it out, and on it read the following. January 1st, 1864. I am John Jones, who writes this letter. My ship is fast sinking with the treasure on board. I am where it is marked on the enclosed chart. Captain Jones turned the sheet over, and the other side was a chart. On the edge were written these words. Dotted lines represent course we took. Towers, said Captain Jones excitedly. Read this. Towers did as he was directed. I think it would pay to go, said Captain Jones. Do you? Just as you say, replied Towers. We'll charter a schooner this very day, said the excited captain. All right, said Towers. So they hired a boat and started off, governed by the dotted lines of the chart. In 4 weeks, they reached the place where directed. And the divers went down. And came up with an iron bottle. They found in it the following lines scribbled on a piece of brown paper. December 3rd, 1880. Dear Searcher, excuse me for the practical joke I have played on you. But it serves you right to find nothing for your foolish act. Well, it does, said Captain Jones. Go on. However, I will defray your expenses to and from the place you found your bottle. I think it will be $250, so that amount you will find in an iron box. I know where you found the bottle because I put this bottle here. And the iron box. And then found a good place to put the second bottle. Hoping the enclosed money will defray your expenses, some I close. Anonymous. I'd like to kick his head off, said Captain Jones. Here, diver, go and get the $250. In a minute, the diver came up bearing an iron box. Inside it was found $250. It defrayed their expenses, but I hardly think that they will ever go to a mysterious place as directed by a mysterious bottle.
Once again, we hope you enjoyed your little trip into the world of H.P. Lovecraft. And last but not least, the railway horror. This is not an official Lovecraft story. even though it may sound familiar to some. It's an excerpt from the writer's letters to his friend Donald Wandering from November 24, 1927, in which he described one of his dreams, or rather, a nightmare.
My dreams occasionally approached the fantastical in character, though falling somewhat short of coherence. One scene is especially stamped upon my recollection. That of a dank, fetid, reed-choked marsh under a gray autumn sky. With a rugged cliff of lichen-crusted stone rising to the north. Impelled by some obscure quest, I ascended a rift or cleft in this beetling precipice. Noting as I did so the black mouths of many fearsome burrows extending from both walls into the depths of the stony plateau. At several points, the passage was roofed over by the choking of the upper parts of the narrow fissure. These places being exceedingly dark and forbidding the perception of such burrows as may have existed there. In one such dark space, I felt conscious of a singular accession of fright, as if some subtle and bodiless emanation from the abyss were engulfing my spirit. But the blackness was too great for me to perceive the source of my alarm. At length, I emerged upon a tableland of moss-grown rock and scanty soil, lit up by a faint moonlight which had replaced the expiring orb of day. Casting my eyes about, I beheld no living object, but was sensible of a very peculiar stirring far below me amongst the whispering rushes of the pestilential swamp I had lit. After walking for some distance, I encountered the rusty tracks of a street railway and the worm-eaten poles which still held the limp and sagging trolley wire. Following this line, I soon came upon a yellow vestibuled car numbered 1852 of a plain, double-trucked type common from 1900 to 1910. It was untenanted, but evidently ready to start. The trolley being on the wire and the air brake pump now and then throbbing beneath the floor. I boarded it and looked vainly about for the light switch, noting as I did so the absence of controller handle, which implied the brief absence of the motorman. Then I sat down in one of the cross seats toward the middle, awaiting the arrival of the crew and starting of the vehicle. Presently, I heard a swishing in the sparse grass toward the left and saw the dark forms of 2 men looming up in the moonlight. They had the regulation caps of a railway company, and I could not doubt but that they were the conductor and motorman. Then one of them sniffed with singular sharpness and raised his face to howl at the moon. The other dropped on all fours to run toward the car. I leapt up and at once raced madly out of that car. Doing this not because the conductor had dropped on all fours, but because the face of the motorman was a mere white cone, tapering to one blood-red tentacle.
And that's that. That's all of Dagon and its 3 DLCs. So another game 100%ed. We'll figure out what to do about the PS5. I might just leave that for a different day and do a handful of PS5 recordings back to back. But yeah, game number 15. We're almost there to 20. So until then,